This is Anthony Kilner from Supernal Magazine Australia, and as part of our Supernal Interview Series, I have got an amazing person to talk to in Carmen Barnsley. And Carmen, welcome to Supernal Magazine, and I know you want to start with a welcome to country, so please fire away.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the Chungarung peoples, the land where I am blessed to live at the moment, and all of the traditional owners, both past, present and upcoming, and all of the cultures and the people that have passed through the lands where I live. I just feel so blessed, and thank you.
You're welcome. So it's great for you to be able to get on and do this video because we know we're going to be dealing with some interesting internet issues. However, we're doing a story about death and dying, and you're part of that as a death doula. And this is going to be featuring, or the story with you and a few other people are going to be featuring in the June 2020 issue, which is coming up. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a death doula.
Well, my background is as a nurse. So I started nursing at 17 years of age. And so through nursing, I experienced obviously death with patients. I had the sudden death of my nephew in 1989, followed 4 months later by the death of my son, which took me on a grief journey of experiences I'd never dreamed I'd have to deal with on a personal level as opposed to a nursing level. I had changes occur from that point with funeral parlours. Something as simple as the last place I saw my son was in hospital, and the funeral parlour came in, and everyone's so grief stricken. You just nod your head and go yes to everything they say, and you don't have any memory of anything they've said. But one thing that stood out to me was they asked if I would like a viewing. And I shut that down very quickly because it just sounded so clinical. Weeks later, I did a course. I was a prenatal educator at the time of my son's death. So I was looking after pregnant families, getting them ready for birth and joy. And I was actually due to do a workshop on what if your baby dies. And I went to that workshop 5 weeks after my own son died, with my eyes being widely opened as to what choices I could have had, didn't have, wish I knew about. I actually went back to the funeral home after my son died and asked him to change the wording. I said, if you had said to me, Carmen, would you like to spend some more time with your son, as opposed to would you like a viewing? I said, I would have been there in a heartbeat. And I asked him, I challenged him to change his wording to love people that came in. I said, say to them, would you like to spend time with your son, daughter, mother, father, grandfather, grandmother? Change it and personalise it. He rang me up 3 months later and thanked me for just getting him to change that. Years went on. I nursed. I was a SANS counsellor, which is still sudden infant death and I'm getting confused. Stillbirth and neonatal death support. And I worked through nursing in and out of jobs. Years later, I had a daughter who was born with a chronic medical condition, and I then was only a casual worker in and out. Her condition resulted in her having a liver transplant when she was 19 years of age, and I spent 20 years of my life being her carer on and off. Then I sort of was back into nursing as she became healthier. My light bulb moment to be a doula was when a gentleman in a care facility I worked at wanted to die where he was. The GP came in and said, now's the time for your wife to be your wife, your daughter to be your daughter, and not your carer. That was my light bulb moment. Unfortunately, with that statement, I had to knock off work, and the gentleman was transferred to the local palliative care unit and died 12 hours later. And all that was needed was somebody else other than the family to be there to do the care side so family could be family.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And that was a bit that actually struck me when I was reading your story and working on it. about it. I think being able to respect people's wishes in regard to passing, you know, which led me to, after reading and working on your story with you, you know, if you're the dying person, what do you want? It seems to be a question that people don't want to talk about.
Absolutely. It's words, death, dying. There's a lot of family members that it's that if we talk about this, it means you're gone, dead, you know, and it becomes a taboo subject. I have no problems with the word death, dying, dead. In our world, we have a lot of people refer to, you know, someone passed or they went to sleep, you know, and they're all wordings that it just distracts from the reality of the person has died, they are dead, someone is dying. And so trying to get there, the dying person generally will want to talk about it. There is some that don't, but they do want to talk about it, and family members don't want to. I have a laugh in my own family. My own family are uncomfortable with me talking about the job I do. Oh, Mum, don't be so negative. And it's not negative. I find it a humbling area to be in. You know, beginning of my career, I worked with birth, and now I work with death, the other end. And I find the experience to be equally privileged to be present at the first breath of a baby to the last breath of an individual.
Yeah, I think you know, the interesting part about what you're saying there is true. It's birth is a transition from one state to another, and so is death is going from one state to another. The soul is there, the energy is still there. It's just that how we feel about the physicalness of it all. I think that's where people might get quite hung up, apart from fear being a driver, that people don't want to talk about it because, as you say, maybe that's going to make it happen.
Exactly. It's like if we talk about it, talking about death won't kill us. And that's a dying to know day have little euphemisms, and that's one of them. Talking about death will not kill us. And so a lot of times we try and encourage people to do what we call an advanced care plan. And this is where, and you do it when you're well, don't do it when you're dying. You know, I have one and I'm not dying. Well, I am dying. We're all getting closer to that end day. We don't know when it will be. Well, I don't. So having your wishes documented, you know, on what you would like, if, you know, what would happen if you had a stroke tomorrow and were unable to communicate your wishes? How do you want to be cared for? What do you want done? Do you want everything done? You know, for example, for myself, I feel that not being able to do my personal care and feed myself, I find that unacceptable. But somebody else may find that okay. So my family knows that if I'm in a situation where I'm not going to get better, it's different short term. So if you need surgery and they need to put a tube down and feed you and you're going to get better, that's fine. But if I'm given a diagnosis that this is the next stage of the end, towards the end of your life, well, I will comfortably allow that to happen naturally. Don't force feed me. Don't put a tube down my throat. If my end result is going to be death, I don't need that to be prolonged. And so I have that documented, so my family knows that.
So having a good care plan, can that be done at home just on a piece of paper, or is there a system or a document that people can get? How does that work?
Okay, we have all of the states, or within Australia, we have Advanced Care Planning Australia, and they are a governing body that the government funds, and they have information for every state in the country. So you can go online and you can download forms. So you can go to Advanced Care Planning Australia. I think it's .org.au. How terrible is that? I should know that one. I've done all their training programs, so forgive me if I've messed that one up.
I will chase that down and make sure it's included in the either in your story or one of the many stories we're doing this month. So yeah.
Each state has subtly different sort of terminology, and within it, to make it a legal document, you write down what you do and you do not want, and you sign it, but you need to sign it with, I know in Victoria and a number of other states, but not all, you take it to your medical practitioner, your GP. They are only there to sign it, to witness that you're mentally sound in what you've written, not to judge you or say you can and can't do a certain thing. And you get them to witness it with a secondary witness, and then it's legal. A lot of this follows the old, and you can also choose a medical treatment decision maker, which again has subtly different name differences throughout the states. The old medical power of attorney, I'm sure everyone's heard of that term. The medical power of attorney, which used to be done through the solicitors and legal contexts, is not there anymore. People can do their own by themselves, and you can nominate somebody to make the decisions for you when you feel you are unable to make decisions. So you can either legally say, this is what I want done, and have that signed off. You can nominate someone to represent you to fulfill your wishes. And it could be something as simple, like I have on mine, that if I'm dying, I would like to have access to fresh air. I don't want to die in a hospital with 4 walls. And I know it's possible, because I remember when my daughter was very ill on life support, there was one day there, they took all the machines and took her outside for some fresh air. So I know it's possible. Some people might want their pets with them. For Indigenous people, they might want to die on country. And for them, that can be very, very important to be able to die on country. Who do you want with you? Do you want your favourite music playing when you die? Do you want lighting? Do you want people present? Do you want it quiet? Do you want lots of, you want your grandkids, present playing in the background? We've got choices that a lot of people, some people will say, gee, I wouldn't do that, but that's what their choice would be. We have the choice to do what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that I hadn't really thought about a lot, to be honest, is those choices. I know, for example, in my will, it states what I want after I'm dying or after I've died. I haven't actually put anything together beforehand in case something goes wrong. So it's a very valid point.
Yeah, it is. And as doulas, myself and other doulas, we assist people if they struggle with this documentation. I assisted a lady, was last year, and she wanted to have everything documented and signed legally because all of her family disagreed with what her wishes were. And she went to the doctor and she said it felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders, because once she had done it in the legal text, getting the multiple signatures, it became a legal document in Victoria. So, and then you give a copy to your doctor, your specialist, the hospital, if you're going into hospital. And so that means that family could not intervene. So that process of if I'm diagnosed with terminal cancer and, something else happens, I have a heart attack, if I've got terminal cancer, please don't resuscitate me. My body has just done this. Whereas if I haven't got that documented, my family could say, oh, no, mum's fine, give us CPR, we need all this done. And you can create that. But if you've got a trusted family member who will follow your wishes, then you can have them documented as your medical treatment decision maker.
Right, okay. So that's very important to be very specific about what you want, how you want, and then make it legal. Because at that point, I guess, it becomes almost irrelevant if people want to challenge that choice.
And it's fluid. Your advanced care directive can change. It's a bit like, how we should check our insurances and make sure we're with the best company every couple of years, or our energy providers. You should also review your advanced care directive, every few years. I went and did a course and where we were all doing our advanced care plan and what each of us thought was acceptable and not acceptable. A young mother of 30 years of age compared to myself, I'm a grandmother now, that we had completely different ideas on what was acceptable. You know, she had young children, so for her, if something happened and she needed to be tube fed, I don't care if I'm sitting at a table tube feeding, I need to spend as much time with my children and be present. Whereas for me, I'm okay with, all right, that I'm getting towards the end and I'm okay with not having that. And, you know, you may have a medical condition that will change, you know, something develops and you change how you feel about a specific request that you have. And that's okay, because you can change it. It's not set in concrete. You can change it.
You can change it. And that change would then imply getting re-signatured,
Yes.
reapproved, all the rest of it.
Yeah. And that's just your GP. It's nothing, you know, generally if your health declines, you're going to be seeing your GP on a regular basis or a specialist, and pretty much you just fill it out and the GP signs with a second. There's 2 witnesses in Victoria, and I know a lot of the other states are the same, and they witness, you know, yours signature and the doctor's signature.
Okay, so that's, I mean, it sounds very straightforward when you put it like that. I wonder how many people will watch this video or read the story and go, I'm actually going to go and do it.
Yep. GPs have a printout within their surgery where they can do it, but unfortunately, I don't think it's comfortable to do it in a rush situation. I think it's better to have all the forms, sit at home if you've got loved ones there to go through with you and understand what you're writing. Advanced Care Planning Australia has guidelines and they have help forms that go along with their forms, which is very beneficial. And you can ring, they've got a hotline and you can ring them, and they've got volunteers who will go through explaining components within the forms.
Excellent. Now, is there a charge, do you know, involved in that?
In Advanced Care Planning Australia, no. It's all
okay.
Advanced Care Planning Australia, that's a free service. They won't fill the form out for you. I mean, when I have assisted people, yes, I do have a charge. I just charge an hourly rate of going out and assisting somebody manage their forms and understanding it. And because of coming from a medical background, doctors also want that there's a level of medical terminology used that's clear, because they can override if they feel that the statement that's been made on the forms isn't clear.
Now that's another interesting point, isn't it? Because, you know, the doctors are the ones that are supposed to fix people. That's part of their Hippocratic oath. And yet here they would be directed to not fix somebody. So I guess that would be, quite an interesting one, that one.
A lot of, I mean, palliative doctors are pretty good. There's a lot of information, and I've done a few online courses that the doctors have done to understand what they are being educated in relation to death and dying. And I mean, I'll be honest, as a nurse, it's hard slog when you've got someone who's come in with a motor vehicle accident and you have done everything to save this person's life and they don't survive. It tears you apart. It's not an easy situation. But I think as time has gone through, there's an element of reality that exists that we can only do so much. And it's probably more so the advanced care directives are generally reflect something that is majorly life-threatening, where someone may have other medical conditions, and there is no reflection of recovery. You know, I mean, if I've got a stroke, if I have a stroke, a massive stroke, pretty much if I don't receive medical treatment within a few hours, I'm going to be left with long-term disability. So that reflection for me is when I put that with it, when I've got my form, it's, if I have a stroke and it is deemed that I will not improve, and it's just that simple statement at the end, and it is deemed I will not improve, I find the following unacceptable. And, and then I sort of will list, being tube fed. If I don't want to be tube fed for the rest of my life, I don't want to be able to not hold my grandchildren, walk, talk. But that's how I feel. It's not how everyone else may feel. and it is deemed that then please, do not do this.
So would you find then, when in part of your work, that you would have family members at loggerheads about that understanding that I don't, and they're going, but I want. How do you get around that?
Well, a lady that I looked after, she was dying, and she knew she was dying. All treatment available to her was not working. And she lived with one of her sons, and her son was struggling to see that his mother was dying. And I have these little cards that they're little cards that I get people to go through. And it's, I gave them both a set of cards, and it's basically what you find acceptable and unacceptable if you were dying. And I got them to put them out, and, give me the top 5 that you find unacceptable, give me the top 5. And then I got them to share their cards, and they both had picked the same things. Mm-hmm. And I remember later in that day, the son turned to me and he said, "Thank you. For the first time I see my mum as another person and not my mum." I mean, He loved his mother, but that was his reasoning for her to keep fighting. "You're my mum. Don't give up, don't give up." But when they did this little activity together, they both cried, and he actually turned to his mum, and it was absolutely beautiful. And he hugged her and he said, "Mum, I understand now."
Yep.
And, then we looked after this lady, and she wanted to die at home, and we looked after. She didn't want her sons to have anything to do with the care. So there was a couple of doulas and we did shifts. And she wasn't alone when she died. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
No, that's great. Well, look, we're coming up to the end of our little time slot that we've allowed for this. I think it's the information you've imparted is amazing. It's very practical. It's very down to earth. And maybe that's what it should be, pardon the pun, of course. It needs to be a down to earth discussion with people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, Carmen, thank you for joining us. And for people out there, I hope you watch this video and get something out of it. We'll include links for people like Advanced Care Australia in the story, either your story or somewhere in the magazine, because I think it's an important part of what we're trying to achieve with understanding death and transition and that space, and that it is a beautiful thing when somebody comes to the end of their life as well, because they've chosen it. And
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I see it as a medium. That's how I see it too. It's just a transition from one state to another. They're still there, so that's what's important. But Carmen Barnsley, thank you very much for joining us, and we will catch up very soon.
Thanks so much, Anthony.
You're welcome. So, Carmen, if somebody does want to become a death doula, how would they actually do that? Where do they go?
Okay, I started by going online and I researched, and there is a number of organisations that run training programs. They are not regulated. To understand that within Australia, it's like the funeral industry. Death doulas are not regulated. So there is a number of organisations. I just went in, did death doula training in Australia, and I came up with some search engines. I trained with Life Options Australia. There's also Preparing the Way is another organisation. There is another one in Queensland, Death Walker Training. I can't think of the name. I've gone blank on the name of the person. Overseas, I know in the United States and the UK, there's some organisations that also do death doula training. Some of them refer to it end-of-life consultant, death doula, death walker, death midwife. There's a lot of terms that are used, but I did mine face-to-face, and then I've constantly, if anyone's interested in doing doula training, research other things as well. I mean, I did all of the online training with Advanced Care Planning Australia, and it's free. There's training that's out there that's free, that people can sort of just see what it's like. get involved with Dying to Know Day. Just if there's an interest, get out there and just search and see what you can find to pique your interest, which will then direct you. I mean, I always believe in gut feelings, and I researched 4 different groups to train, and my gut feeling told me to go in a specific direction, and I was very happy with that.
Excellent, excellent. Would you like to see the industry regulated?
I wouldn't. I think it probably would be okay to be regulated. In relation to formalising, I know 2 major training groups have got themselves set up for if it regulates, and they've set, including the one I went with, they've sort of done it so that they've created subjects and complete training hours, so that if it did regulate, they will carry through. I mean, I'm a reflexologist by training, and it originally wasn't there as a regulated, component, and now it is. And people that had trained before all those subjects, they just had to do a couple of little, carry through ones that got them up to diploma levels.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really good and hopefully very helpful to people out there that want to know a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.